I am Licínio Lima from the University of Minho in Portugal, and I am going to join the Comparative Studies in Adult Education and Lifelong Learning Winter School during the first week. I'm going to work together with Paula Guimarães and Regina Egetenmeijer. We will be discussing topics concerning strategies and policy analysis, the development of adult education policies through programs and activities is in general part of supranational, national, regional and local policies. Policies that support adult education programs and activities, among others, eventually including the setting of priorities of adult education policies, allowing the establishment of formal regulations, setting rules to funding to be provided to stakeholders, and finally, allowing regulations of adult education occupations. Now, the aim of our work during the first week will be to study a theoretical framework concerning adult education and lifelong learning policies in the European Union and also in other countries. And it also aims at raising awareness on adult education and lifelong learning policies and developing skills on the analysis and interpretation of perspectives, programs and activities of adult education in Europe and outside Europe. Several concepts such as lifelong education, lifelong learning, public policies and strategies will be discussed during the first week of this winter school. Some analytical tools, such as the multi-level analysis of policies, will be stressed too. And additionally, a specific theoretical framework will be debated. Apart from theoretical discussions, specific field visits to German adult learning and education organizations will be organized, and meetings and interviews with representatives of those institutions referring to activities devoted to adults will be held. Now, I will ask you, please use the study guide prepared by Lima and Guimarães 2011 to clarify the basic concepts already mentioned and to discuss them in a critical way. Some authors hold that the more pragmatic and technocratic lifelong learning solutions have actually been relating life to a long series of learning experiences regarded as useful and effective, in tune with a certain economic rationality, instrumentalizing life and detaching it from its less marketable aspects. Some approaches forget, or at least reject, the substance of life throughout learning, because this concept of learning has opted for narrow standards of usefulness and individual adaptability, sometimes to the limit of alienation. Countering those utilitarian and human capital perspectives and different theoretical approaches of education and democratic emancipatory conceptions of ALE do actually exist as an alternative. These maintain that the chief strength of education is, paradoxically, its apparent weakness, its own almost always slow rhythms, the trial and error tests, the uncertainty and lack of instant spectacular results, its processes of dialogue, sociability, and participation in decisions. And this is why democratic education is seen by the critical approaches as being incompatible with a purely technical training, outside a reference of values and goals, focused only on the means as happens with the phenomena of drilling and indoctrinating, or with all forms of conditioning human beings, no matter what the political, ideological, economic, or any other kind of agenda. Concerning the distinction between policies and strategies, policies relate to the priorities it includes, the education modes it favors, the regulation it implements, the orientation that it establishes in terms of management and administration, public services, etc. It is at this level that education policy is largely formulated. Education politics refers to the political process by which a policy is agreed upon by the various actors involved with the social pact. For example, the state, entrepreneurial associations, trade unions, etc. Strategies of adult education and learning are the processes by which a policy is adopted. They involved the phases, junctures, rules and norms that surround the achievement of a policy. The strategies concern the more instrumental dimension of a policy. The study of strategies stresses the importance of technical procedures, while it underplays the political dimensions relating to the values, principles, etc. of a policy. As an example of a strategy can be the guidelines established in the Memorandum on Lifelong Learning from the European Union. As several authors argued, such as John Field, the Memorandum on Lifelong Learning was an important attempt at establishing a global policy consensus. This document set a specific background characterized by social and economic transformation in progress. It aims at the dynamization of the active citizen and the promotion of employability. From this point of view, the memorandum could be identified as an educational policy, although its aims are very close to economic policy objectives. However, the memorandum defines several aspects, such as formal, non-formal and informal learning, the 6 key messages by which adult learning can be developed, etc., indicating clear education and learning paths for national governments and local adult education centers all around the European Union, and in developing adult education programs and activities. Now, I would suggest for the preparation of the winter school, specifically the preparation of this very first week, you could read the book by Lima and Guimarães, 2011, called European Strategies in Lifelong Learning, a Critical Introduction. It focuses on lifelong education, lifelong learning, and the state. The analysis of adult learning and adult and education policies. The European Union, strategies for lifelong learning. UNESCO as a policy actor in education. I also recommend the book chapter by Lima, Guimarães and Thomas, called Adult Learning and Education Policies in Germany, Portugal and Sweden, which was published in 2016, where the 3 analytical models of adult learning and education are explained in connection with the national reports of Germany, Portugal and Sweden, which were presented to Confiter 6 2009 in Brazil. With a different status, I would recommend as optional readings the chapter by Lima and Guimarães 2015 called Portugal, Policy and Adult Education, and also the two papers by Colin Griffin 1999, the first one called Lifelong Learning and Social Democracy, and the second one, Lifelong Learning and Welfare Reform. Please use the study guide prepared by Lima and Guimarães 2011 to understand the already referred analytical models. And there are three. The first one is the so-called democratic emancipatory model, in which democratic participation and critical education are very important in relation to ALE, adult learning and education actions, in particular popular and community education. The second one will be the modernization and state control model based on public provision, the intervention of the welfare state, and generally dominated by second opportunity education guidance. And the third and last one will be the so-called human resources management model in search of economic modernization and the production of skilled labor led by vocationalist ideologies for the production of human capital. These are models that, thanks to their breadth, seek to understand the very different public policies adopted in countries and regions that are themselves also very different. Despite the identification of three distinct public policy models, independent from each other, it is important to note that their construction is part of a continuum or an imaginary theoretical line where each model occupies a specific position. And this means that the three models, although different from one another, are not exclusive and can even coexist. Now, after reading the definition of the three analytical models proposed in this study guide written by Lima and Guimarães, the democratic emancipatory model, the modernization and state control model, and human resources management model, students are asked to achieve the following tasks. In light of each analytical model, you start by defining the national, regional, or local context of your search, and then find their different policies of adult education and learning that can be better interpreted by each of the three analytical policy models. This would be the very first task of your work. Then, in a second moment, please choose one example where you can see a hybrid character that you think may be better understood at least by two of the analytical models, and point out relevant aspects involved. And please, do not forget to refer to the level of analysis that you have decided to choose. Finally, come back to this video presentation and listen to my colleague Paulo Guimarães for a structural tutorial. And that is all. I wish you all a very successful work, and I see you in Germany.